Koffler. I'm the sheltering lead for the Cascades region. So great to be here, and hopefully you get a lot out of this presentation. And then we also have Tina. So Tina.
Hi, I'm Tina Wong. I am the Mass Care Regional Lead for the Cascades. So we work together.
Great. And then you definitely want to have chat functionality today because we will be doing polls again, similar to what we did last week if you attended last week. And it just gives us a little bit more ability to have engagement with everybody. So please use that, the polls when they pop up. And if for whatever reason the polls don't work for you and you want to answer that question, just go ahead and put it in chat. That's fine as well. So thanks.
All right, so before we jump into job inductions, we kind of want to go over arriving on a DRO from the very beginning. And arriving to a disaster relief operation can kind of show up in different ways, and it can really impact the first 24 hours you have on that DRO, disaster relief operation. So in my experience, one of the biggest things that affects my in-processing is if I arrive at night or if I arrive during the day. If I arrive during the day, it's more likely that I'll head directly to headquarters to get in processing and jump right into the job. If I come in, if my flight is late, I will most likely go to my lodging, get situated, put my luggage away before starting my shifts and in processing the next day. So those are kind of some of the biggest differences. And also it depends on, if you work the day shift or night shift, depending on what you've been assigned. Most people arrive to a large disaster relief operation by plane, but if you're within 200 miles of the operation, you could be driving in. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You might head directly to headquarters, not having to stop at an airport or a rental agency, something like that. And then another big factor is the availability of cars on the relief operation. The drivers who are there will dictate whether you pick up a rental car from a rental agency or if someone will pick you up, whether that be a fellow volunteer or a taxi, Uber, Lyft, that kind of situation. So you want to make sure that you talk to your local staff services to find out who the important staff contacts are on the DRO and try to get in contact with them, before you arrive to get as many details as you can. Now, sometimes that, the DRO staff services will contact you before you can contact them. That's ideal, but you can always, take that extra step and get that information yourself. And then also just a reminder to be flexible. You might be told something when you get on your flight, and during the time of your flight, those circumstances change. So you might get new directions right when you arrive. So just know that things could change quickly. So,
All right.
so before go ahead, Alan.
So basic and processing steps. The biggest thing is you want to check in with that staff services and obtain relevant information for your personal deployment. So confirming lodging details is the biggest one, and that's not always available. A lot of times, if you go into that headquarters and you ask for where you'll be staying, you won't have that information, or there won't be lodging for you yet, and it may not be available till that afternoon or even that early evening. So just be really flexible on that. You want to verify your transportation. So if you've not been to a DRO before, a DRO before, transportation is going to want your keys if you have a rental car. So you want to make sure you get them so they can log it. And they really track all the cars and decide, who's going to have a car, who's not. We don't have enough cars for everyone. That's always a big discussion. So just keep that in mind that you're going to want to do that if you have a car. And then find out where you're going to store your luggage. So if you are like me, I typically arrive really late on a DR. And check into my hotel at 10, 11, midnight, 1 a.m., something like that. But if you arrive early enough, your hotel might not even be ready, and you're going to put your luggage kind of by your area. So if it's for sheltering, there might be a little area that people can put their luggage and then actually go work for the day. And then also find out how to reload or replace your mission card if needed. A lot of times that's going to be in the IAP, the Incident Action Plan. But you can always ask somebody too if you need it. If you didn't have one, if you for whatever reason you deployed, you don't have one, you want to get that right away, get that figured out. You also want to complete a disaster relief operations orientation. Those are usually in the IAP, but it's going to provide you some additional information about the DRO and unique circumstances for that deployment. So it's very important that you do that. And then the last thing is you want to find out who your direct supervisor is and where to report to your activity, where that is. So those are the steps that you want to do right off the bat when you go into headquarters for in-processing. Tina, is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, I think that's great. So I see Ron mentioned something in the comments. That's kind of a great segue. The home deployment people might not know exactly what contact information is for the DRO people. So getting an IAP in advance could help you kind of find those people. So I want to show some of the pages in the IAP that are most useful, I would say, at the beginning of any DR or even throughout it. So this is kind of small, so if you need to zoom in, I would suggest that. But this is a full page of an IAP. This one is on page 9 of 28, and it's the contact roster for the headquarters. So the first section here, it will always be the 24-hour lines that are available to you to get assistance with what you need. So duty officers, if it's a local response, there's LSAP, life safety, and asset protection, staffing, staff health, and disaster services technology, DST. So this 24-hour staffing one is really the one that's going to help you with the lodging and the transportation to get started. And then if you wanted, you could even look to see, who your managers were, the people maybe above your supervisor, to get more detail of what kind of work you'll be doing. So that's the first page, is the contact roster. And the second part is the 204 section, the work assignments. So this one shows you all of the work assignments that are occurring on the DRO. So I pulled the first page to show you kind of what it looks like at the beginning, and then a page that shows a few different work assignments and how much they can vary. So on this first page here, it gives you a general message. The higher ups in headquarters who are making decisions, and then each work site has its own little section of what the specific duties are there, who the leaders are, how many people are assigned, what time the shift hours are, and if there's multiple sites, that you might be itinerating to, going from one to another, what those are. So these are kind of some key points you might want to check out at the beginning of an operation or your experience in operation. And with that, we're going to go to our first poll question. We use these to kind of keep you engaged and get an idea of what your thoughts are. So Alan will pull up that poll. Let's see if he's got it. We'll say, and it's a pretty simple one, true or false. Job inductions are required for all volunteers.
There's no wrong answer here too. We can't tell what your answers are. So just answer it based on what your knowledge is, and we'll go from there. And it looks like we have about 30 people that have responded so far. So we're going to wait just a couple more seconds. And it looks pretty good. So out of the 38 responses that we received so far, 100% said the answer is true, and that is correct. So job inductions are required for all volunteers. So fantastic job. Great knowing that. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll.
Yeah, I see someone's hand up. So until the presentation's over, the mics will be disabled. So if you could type your question or comment into the chat, then we'll be able to respond to it.
All right, Tina.
Yeah, so it looks like everybody answered true, and that's great because everyone really should be getting a job induction, and we'll talk about how we can get the best kind of job induction for our jobs. So what is the ideal job induction? The job induction is a specific orientation after you get the general one from staffing about your role within the work assignment. So it's given to you by your activity supervisor or manager, depending on the DRO. It could even be both. It could be two-parted. The ideal job induction provides the volunteer with enough information to complete their assignment successfully. And here are the things that you would be hearing about or getting to know in the job induction. So the first part is people. Who are your supervisors? What is the chain of command? Who are your coworkers? Who will be working with you? Who will relieve you? What kind, do we have clients? How are the clients? What are the clients needing in that moment? And what kind of community supports are available? You should be getting to understand the tasks that you'll be doing. So a schedule, just a brief description of tasks, different kind of things you could be doing, and duties and responsibilities. You should know the places that you'll be doing. So definitely know where headquarters is, what your work site or work sites are, and a good job induction usually provides some kind of tour of the facility or at least a map of the important locations. And then finally, materials should be provided as well, or at least where you can get them. So personal protective equipment, PPE, where the appropriate forms are, how to get more materials, and then technology, equipment, tools. So whether that means you need working gloves, utility gloves, or Wi-Fi hotspot, or a cell phone, or a laptop, or a pen, any of those, that should be part of the job induction.
So before I go into some worksite information, I do want to answer that. There was a question that came up that whether it was workforce versus volunteer, since some are paid staff on those job inductions. So job inductions are for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're a volunteer or a paid staff, Red Cross volunteer, Red Cross paid staff member, everybody gets a job induction. On the worksite information, you want to find out as somebody volunteering or showing up on a DRO, you want to find out how many sites you're going to be working at. Is it going to be multiple sites? Do you have to travel between sites? This really came up in the last few years as we had non-congregate shelters, and we might have had people that were going to multiple hotels to work with clients. And so you just want to know how many sites that you'll be working at and what that role will be, what your role will be. You also want to know how you're going to get there. So rental cars can become scarce on DROs. So sometimes you have one, sometimes you don't. So you want to make sure you coordinate that. So if you don't have a rental car, you always want to make sure you're coordinating how you're going to get to your job assignment. So if you're supposed to be at your assignment at 8 a.m. and you want to make sure that you coordinate if you're at a staff hotel or staff shelter with some other volunteers that are driving so that you could all get there at the same time and be there at the same time. And then you also want to respect that too. So if you all decide that you're going to meet at the hotel lobby at 7 a.m., by all means, you need to be there at 7 a.m. because it's not their responsibility to wait for you because we don't want to have volunteers showing up late because somebody else is. So just keep that in mind that's a really important part too. And then what is the current situation at the sites? So are there clients at the site and how many? Are you arriving to a new shelter that you're going to be setting up? Are you going to a shelter that already has 35 clients in it? Just kind of know what you're walking into. And then what other Red Cross staff will be working with you. So if you could find that out in advance before you even get there, that's always helpful. It's also really great to know if there's other organizations that are going to be working at the shelter. So you just kind of know what you're walking into. And then lastly, is there any current issues or problems that you need to be aware of? So every shelter is different. And there could be issues that you have no idea. There could be a lot of hard clients at this one shelter. And it's just always nice to kind of put your mindset in the right frame as you walk in. So any information that you could get on that would be very beneficial to you. Tina, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we put this slide kind of in question form because I think these are questions that you could ask, right? And that you should be thinking about as you're getting an induction to critically think about. That's it. So now we're going to move on to kind of the realities of job induction. It's a lot of information that you should be getting at the beginning of your work. But in a disaster response, it's pretty chaotic, right? Where there's a lot going on. So there can be great variation in the job induction you receive that's given to you. So Some examples here, a job induction could be started at headquarters by a manager. You could be given formal typed instructions or job tools or quick training on technology. It can also be completed or given to you at a work site by your shift supervisor. It can be thorough, include those trainings, use specifically only on this job, or it can be really brief and succinct and kind of just, you know, throwing you into the pool. And it can be individually administered, like you could get a one-on-one, as shown at this top picture, where you get all the information, you can ask your questions, or it could be in a large group setting because many of you will be doing similar jobs. So that is not to say that you shouldn't get the information that is required for you to do a job well on a DRO, but the circumstances can be very different from shelter to shelter, from operation to operation. So the helpful tips I have on the side of receiving a job induction is to really advocate for yourself. Ask those questions of what is important for you to feel confident in the task that you are handed in making sure that our clients are taken care of. And then both for the supervisor and the person receiving the job induction, we'll show you the job induction checklist. It's off the exchange, it's 2 pages, kind of a quick table of all the things that you should keep track of for needed information and that you can refer back to as a reference. So this is a good way for supervisors to make sure that they are giving all the information they need to their workforce, and for the workforce to make sure that they have received all that information, and if they didn't, to get it and to ask for it. So with that, we're going to go into our next poll question. We want to know, what is the most important thing for you in a job induction? If you're going into a job, into a disaster relief operation, what is most important?
And again, you want to do this kind of like last week. If you were there, 1, 2, or 3 word answers would be great. So just think about, walking into a site. Maybe think back to when this was your first DR that you responded to. What was the most important thing, or what was the one thing that you really wanted to know walking in that would have been really helpful for you? I know that, a new volunteer in the Red Cross, having just traveled, trying to learn how to actually get to a DR and all the chaos that goes along with that, and then they finally arrive at their work site. What would be the one thing that would maybe make a big difference for you if you think back to that? So lots of great answers coming in. We definitely want some more. So a lot of people asking about, who their supervisor is a big one. And I agree with that. What the work assignments are, what their duties are going to be, what the daily schedule is going to be, what the job expectations are. Those are all great answers.
Yeah, these are great answers. There's one that's really sticking out to me right now is supervisor welcoming. So I think that's less about the information you get in a job induction and more about the experience that you have, right? You really want to have an induction where you feel the supervisor cares and is welcoming you to the team. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind is, it's not just about information dumping, but making sure that, the workforce is comfortable in what they're doing. And something that I have done before for my job inductions is to, before even I get started with the information, is to ask them, have they been on a DRO before? Kind of what is their experience, to gauge, how much information or how much accommodation they will need to feel confident in their work. So I love that, the giving the team vibe, the warm, you know we're here to help you be successful.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll.
Yeah, any other ones that you're seeing, Ellen? I mean, they're all great. I'm seeing quite a few different ones.
Yeah,
So
actually saw the have a buddy one too, which I think is good. So if you're reporting to a job site, especially like if you're in the car together and you're all reporting together, hopefully you're with people that you may have already been introduced to or gotten to know. So that's always possible. But if not, once you get there, then it is a big part of this is about engaging with the volunteers that are there and getting to know who they are as well, who you're going to be working with.
yeah, and I think that's one more thing to know. Like everyone wants to know who the supervisor is and right where they can report information and issues and have that contact. And I think that's really important too. But the buddy, sometimes you learn more from that buddy or having somebody that you're working with, the coworker that you're side by side with all day, to really cement the information from a job induction. So yeah, excellent. Okay. So the answers are coming in. Yeah, please keep, bringing things up if they haven't been mentioned. But now we're going to kind of go into that job induction checklist. Alan, put the link in the chat for the exchange where you can find this. You can print it out or you can, write the titles in your notepad that you take with you so you can write this information down. So I just did an example so, you could see as thorough of these notes, a version of these notes, and, kind of what you would write, what you would get in a job as a result of a job induction. So this is the first page. I just put it into a different format so we could alter it and type it out. So the overview for the group or activity plan for delivering service. So this one, we're providing shelter at congregate sites. My assignment in the plan is to be a day shift service associate for the time I'm there. The specific responsibility I've been given by my supervisor is that they have split the 12-hour shift into different stations. And to start with, I'm assigned in the mornings at the registration front desk, stepping aside sometimes to help with the lunch serving. In the afternoons, I switch to roving the dorms, keeping the common areas clean, and then assisting the dinner service as well. In terms of accountability, I have to make sure that I keep counts of the meals served, the snacks that I hand out, the number of registrations that I have completed, so new dormitory registrations, the check-in sheets at the entrance, and any referrals that clients ask for within our individual disaster care services. I know that the deadline is 3:30 every day for those daily counts. As a service associate, I will not have any financial authority and to request materials through a supervisor, maybe even filling out my own 6409 for them to approve. The available resource I have truly at this site will be what's in the trailer, what's in the kit, and then I know that I will not be alone on this shift, that there are 2 other SAs. The only existing potential issue that my supervisor brought up was that the custodians only come once a week to clean the bathrooms. And so that's something we need to keep an eye on if there's something that happens. Communication channels, there is a shift cell phone that I give off to the next person when my shift ends, and that there's an IEP printed every day on the desk. During the job induction, my supervisor told me that great client service is the most important thing and that they want to know issues as soon as possible using that cell phone to report those as needed and escalating those as soon as I can. So then the second page is a little bit shorter. It's like really more of a half page, I would say. And that's more for my personal deployment. Where the work assignment is. So in this, I wrote it's at this middle school. That's the site I will be staying at. And they told me quickly it's off I-90 exit 4. And that's just for me to remember. But I do also have Google Maps, and I will be using that to get to work every day if I need. I'm staying at the Holiday Inn, but this could also be, a staff shelter. It could also mention who my roommate is, if that's someone, but I don't know that yet. So I just know it's a Holiday Inn nearby. And they told me it was the only Holiday Inn, so I haven't put any more information than that. For my technical information, I went to Services Technology, their little hub in headquarters before I came on site. John Johnson told me that if there's any issues, if I can't get my hotspot to work, if my phone is glitching, that I should call him at this phone number. My supervisor says that they will be writing my performance eval for me, so I wrote that down, Sam Sampson. And staff services said there's not one person who will be taking care of administration stuff, so I should just call the 24-hour line, which I pulled from the IAP for quick reference here. And then others, really any other notes you want to put in there. So maybe if you have that buddy that you made carpooling, you could write their information down so you can have a phone a friend, or if you have a phone a friend from your region, some leadership person that you feel comfortable asking questions to that you don't feel comfortable yet asking people on the DRO, that kind of thing. So HQ told me that I'll be carpooling on the first day with other people at the hotel named David and Beth. And their contact information is this. So this is just an example of what would go into this checklist after a decent job induction.
Which may or may not be on this form. It could also be on your notepad that you're carrying with you, that you bring to every DR, and you just start putting these notes in. It could be, you could also put it in your phone. So I know for me, I usually put notes in my phone and put all this information in there too. So you could use the form, you could use the notepad, you could use your phone, whatever works best for you. But this just gives you an idea of the information that you really want to have to be the most successful at the job.
Yeah, and honestly, some of it might be really specific, like this shelter gets chilly around 3 p.m. every day because that's when the AC kicks in and it just blasts cold air and there's not much we can do about it. You know, so, little details like that are good to write down because in the chaos of a disaster, you won't remember to grab your jacket before your 12-hour shift or to pack your own snack because the snacks available aren't quite suitable for your dietary needs. So just little things like that I would make sure to write down. And yeah, like Alan said, a lot of my notes are on my phone, but you could have your own notepad or a little pocket pad, things like that. Okay, we have one final poll question for you guys.
Last poll, I promise. Super easy. Assigned volunteers can ask for a job induction from their supervisors if they have not already received one. So again, no right or wrong answers. Just mark true or false, and nobody could tell what your answers are, so it doesn't really matter. Looks like everybody agrees that the answer is true. So that's correct. So there's a lot of reasons why this might happen. So, you know, imagine you're walking into a shelter that has, you know, 50, 60, 70 clients in it already, and your shelter supervisor, while you know who the person is, they say, hey, it's Tina over there, but Tina is also surrounded by, you know, media and doing an interview right now. So obviously she's not going to drop everything to be able to do a job induction for you. And so what happens is you might meet some other sheltering staff and you start working and helping, and then you connect it with Tina, but then you're interrupted again, and lo and behold, for whatever reason, that induction's never been done. So when you see Tina or myself or your supervisor, whoever that might be, where there's a low moment, at any time you could walk up to them and say, hey, you know, when I came in, you were really busy. I really need to get that job induction just so I know kind of what the expectations are and what you really want from me, and is now a good time to do that. So at any time you could do that. It's really important because it's going to give you the best experience in working in that shelter and working on that assignment and make sure you have a positive DRO.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this kind of goes back to my hint or my tip about advocating for yourself. Getting a good job induction or receiving one to get in contact with your supervisor helps them remember you. So as Luke Beckman says, you know, if you've been on a DRO for more than 3 days, you're entitled to evaluation. So having the supervisor, that connection, making sure that, there was a good hello means that also that there will be a good goodbye. And, not only can you ask for a job induction? I think everyone should ask for one if they haven't received it. It doesn't mean that, yeah, it's going to be instant gratification, but you don't want to just start doing something and then get reprimanded for it later unfairly. So, great. We have a few more tips for you. These came from a job tool in the Exchange that's kind of like tasks that you can do as a first timer in congregate shelters, but I think it really rings true whether you're a first timer or not.
So this is all about preparing for your shift. So there you talk about watching the first two videos, serving shelter clients during COVID-19. I think it's a great video to watch, even though hopefully we're past that. I think there's some great tips on there that we could still continue to use as we go forward. And then Everyone is Welcome is another video that we should probably all watch again. It's very important. Bring personal identification, wear closed-toed comfortable shoes, dressed appropriately for conditions. Try not to wear shirts and with like slogans or large branding. You really want to try to be neutral. That's the whole idea, is that you're there to welcome everyone wherever they may be. So being neutral is a big part of it. Take your temperature before you go. Temperatures must be 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit or less. This talks about logging into volunteer connection to cancel your shift, but it's really about if you don't feel well, you're at your hotel, you wake up and you're just sick, then that's when you text or call your supervisor and you just let them know, hey, for whatever reason, I'm really sick. I'm not gonna be able to show up for my shift today. I'm gonna call health services, and that's what you need to do. So let's keep that in mind. That's how you do that. Consider bringing your own masks. So with sheltering, we still are going to be wearing masks. So all volunteers will be wearing masks on shelters. And so make sure you bring your mask that's comfortable. I mean, you've had 2 years to find a comfortable mask. You might want to make sure you have a couple of those and have them in your bag ready to go. So when you're deploying, you have a mask that you're going to be comfortable with. Pen, pad, paper, smartphone, and charger. If you forget your charger, which is probably one of the most common things, almost every gas station in the world sells chargers for every phone, assuming that they're open, which depending on what the disaster is, that may or may not be the case. So the other thing that would be really great to bring is, a smartphone is like some kind of backup charger, some kind of battery backup that you could just plug in. Sometimes, finding a place to charge your phone could be a little bit more challenging than you would expect, depending on where you're staying. If you're in a staff shelter, there's just limited resources, that might be an easier way to do it. You definitely want to bring your medications or anything you might need during your shift. Maybe your own personal supply of ibuprofen or whatever that might be would be really helpful. And then also remember that we're all about having a safe and welcoming environment, not only for our clients, but for our volunteers. So harassments, threats, violence of any kind is absolutely not tolerated. And one of our core values is neutrality, which is about being respectful for all religions, whether it's political or beliefs. It doesn't matter whether it's a worker, a fellow worker, or a client. We want to avoid those conversations so we don't have to get into those sensitive topics. And then the Red Cross must be respectful of the confidentiality for the people we serve. So for this reason, do not post images or comments on social media. So when you're out of shelter, this is not a great time to do a selfie with all your sheltering clients behind you. It's just not probably a great practice. There are ways to take pictures with clients at shelters and have releases so they could be used with media. So if you have questions about that, you could always kind of reach out to that public relations team that's assigned to the DR and ask them about that. And that would be a great way to do it. And then somebody, I just happened to see that pop up, mentioned Red Cross vest. Absolutely. So when you leave for your DR, hopefully you're leaving with a Red Cross vest. If you're a new volunteer, usually if you tell staffing that you don't have that, that'll be part of what they will try to get you to make sure that you're deploying with all the tools that you need. So anything in there that you want to mention as well, Tina? Did I miss anything in chat?
Yeah, there's a few things in chat that I think are great. So Laura brought up a Red Cross name tag. So if you have a Red Cross badge, that's great to keep on your vest. Like it's part of the what we call kind of a Red Cross uniform. And if you don't have one now, you should talk to your local staff services to get one before your next deployment. A lot of shelter kits, shelter trailers also have name tags, so you can, put a sticker on just to identify yourself as someone with the Red Cross who can help. Great ideas. A fanny pack is another suggestion that came out because you don't want to leave your cell phone unattended or your notes, and so to have that kind of on your person is really helpful. I always have a fanny pack, so that rings true for me. Someone, Erica asks if we get a Red Cross vest at the DRO location. More oftentimes than not, headquarters or your site will have extra vests for people to wear, but I always bring my own because I like to have it tightened and strapped the way I like, and I also use the pockets for things like chapstick, as Shirley mentioned. So, there's some great things coming in the chat for more things that you can bring to prepare yourself, and be ready so that you don't have to worry about things, and we can focus on the clients. So, Hillary says, can we touch on the new DRO functions in the Volunteer Connections app? She can if we'd like to. So yeah, after we close out the presentation, we're almost done here. We'll unmute, and Hillary, if you could show us those, because I am not as familiar with the Volunteer Connections app. So we can do a quick little demo.
I think Hillary was actually volunteering to do another entire class for the region, so that's great. I think that's awesome, Hillary. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, let's get a teaser after this of like what that presentation will be. Because that is a great resource actually on your phone to just have that downloaded. There are some cool things on there, so great. Pens, hand lotion, all of these things are coming up as well. So yeah, those are great things to prepare yourself. So I have one more slide from that job tool, and these are just kind of a general list of tasks that shelter workers do all the time to take care of our clients. Now, your supervisor will direct you right to these tasks. Like I showed in my example, you might be stationed somewhere or responsible for one section, but there can be a lot of downtime as well in shelters, and we want to be able to use that effectively to do any of these kind of all around tasks that are always needed at a shelter. So being that welcome face to clients, having those conversations, that's important. Supporting collection of client registration information, that can include things like alphabetizing all the registrations you already have so that we can go through them quickly for important information. Sorting them, or making sure we have enough copies of welcome letters and registration forms to be able to do those client registrations. Showing clients to their cots, we kind of talked about this in our last session, organizing the dorm and making it a calm, welcoming environment, and labeling where people go in their cots so that we can keep people accountable. Showing people different locations, talking to them, providing information about all our other activities like individual disaster care or recovery or shelter resident transition services, serving meals, grabbing somebody a snack or water. A lot of times community resources will come in with information about, where they can get free clothes or where they can do laundry or things that they can, activities for their kids to do. So, kind of spreading that information, creating an information board, keeping that updated are things that you can do to kind of fill up your time and make sure that we are doing the most in these shelters. Cleaning and receiving deliveries, letting supervisors know when things come in, and organizing that is also a big one. So these are just kind of, little things that maybe you're in the first job induction, you get your supervisor gives you one station to be in, but you're not quite sure of all the individual tasks you could be doing throughout your 12-hour shift to keep yourself busy. Anything you want to add to that, Alan?
No, I don't think so. I think that, one of the things that we did learn in the last 2 years for sure is to clean and clean and clean and clean some more. And I think that that's something that we should carry over going forward, right? The more cleaning we could do, especially high contact surface areas, the better and healthier we're going to be as volunteers and the better our clients are going to be. So I think that we should just continue to do that, continue to use like all the hand sanitizer, all that kind of stuff, just keeps us more healthy. And hopefully we don't go into the full COVID-19 safety requirements anymore again, but I think it's a good practice to keep and maintain, even though we're all kind of sick of it. So.
Yeah, great point. So that's all we have in terms of prepared information. I think kind of the biggest takeaway is that job inductions are very different, across the board, depending on the time of day, the scenarios. But you really want to make sure you get the information you need to feel comfortable and confident in your duties. So thank you everybody for joining us. I'm going to ask UA to unmute people, and maybe we could do raising hands. And if Hillary could show us or explain some of the functionality of that app, that would be excellent.
Yes, I can. Do you want me to pull up? Here, let me, I'm going to request control so I can share.
Yeah, I think UA can give you that.
Okay.
We'll just...
And maybe before we do that, are there any other questions that came up that we didn't answer or that you'd want to know before we go into anything that Hillary's got to show us? All right. What do you got, Hillary?
Okay. Give me a second. I've got stuff on Teams there, which is not what I mean to be showing. Okay, here we go. So let me see if I can make this a little bigger. So there does exist a Volunteer Connection app on your usual app stores, Google, whatever that's called for Google. And it's a handy dandy little app for doing things in Volunteer Connection regularly. Maybe I just like it because as someone who does workforce, I kind of live in there. But anyhow, something that they just rolled out, I think last week, which is why you're not seeing it in the presentation we just saw, is they've added a DRO tile to it. I'm pointing at my screen as if you can see me. Over here, you can see these are each what I'm going to call little tiles or buttons, and they take you into different areas of the app. And the newest one is for when you're assigned on a DRO. And I'm going to shrink this back down so I can read it. But it's going to give you a lot of information that we talked about as things that you'll need to know as you're starting your deployment, like where am I going and who is my supervisor and what do I do when I get there? All of that info is going to be pushed into the app. So instead of potentially having to get text messages and emails while you're flying or trying to figure out who you're supposed to see, you can just open your app and it'll be right there. It's also a place where you can reload your mission card, which is great. It means that you don't have to do an email as you used to. It can put you in direct contact with people that you might need to contact, like staff services. So like at the push of a button, you can get in touch with them. If you're a supervisor, you'll get your DRO roster to see who reports to you and good things like that. It has locations, and you can easily, if you see that it says that something that's different from what you know to be the case, you can submit a change request like, oh, no, I'm not staying at that hotel anymore. They must have forgotten to update it or something like that. Anyway, it's just a great tool to push that information out to you so you're not trying to figure out where do I get this and where do I find that number. And we all hope it works super well when we start using it. If you don't have the Volunteer Connection app, go for it. Get it. Obviously, it's free on your app store.
Yeah, and I think you just search for, if you search for Red Cross, Volunteer Connection is one of the ones that come up, I believe. It's been a while since I've searched on the App Store for it.
Just search Volunteer Connection, it's right there.
Yeah. And then somebody else asked how you could get that. So this is a future release. I don't know if is it out yet or.
It just launched.
Okay.
Although mine has yet to, I'm not entirely sure if it only shows you the DRO tile if you're assigned to something. That is entirely possible.
That's what I think is happening because I don't see it on mine. So I would assume that once
I was going to say, Hillary, yes, it only shows up once you've been assigned.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because otherwise it would just be a bunch of no information.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but great tools like having the Red Cross app when you're being deployed is fantastic for so many reasons, like remembering what your volunteer number is, if that's an issue for you, or maybe finding contacts back in your home region. So if you wanted to ask questions to somebody that's been in sheltering before, you could kind of refer to that, maybe call them or send them a text and say, hey, what do I do in this situation? So the volunteer app is something that we all should have on our phones. If you don't, especially with these new tools being added, I think it's going to be a much more beneficial tool when you're deployed. So thanks for sharing all that, Hillary.
Yeah, I just put in a link to, I didn't put a name on it, but it says the end of it is responder one sheet intro -2 -PDF. That's the sheet that I just had up on my screen when I shared. That will get into more detail than I did. And yes, Cynthia's showing the app. And then someone asked about not being able to train. Yes, we can't. So there, I believe there will be a little training that comes. It's just not out yet. Like this is really just kind of breaking news. So stay tuned. But reading that sheet that I just linked to it's super intuitive. This is no RC care here. This is easy peasy.